You're going to do all the talking. I'm just going to
The good news is we can run and get the...
You know this
no,
guy.
I'm not.
I want you to talk a lot.
She doesn't. She doesn't want me to talk a lot.
Hi, I'm Bruna Papandrea, film and TV producer, female founder, and CEO. And this is Invisible Roadmap, a show about the people who build extraordinary lives without a roadmap. No connections, no shortcuts, just grit, courage, and belief. Each week, I sit down with successful people to uncover their decisions, the failures, and the moments that define their lives, and the unpaved paths they took to get there. Erin French, Michael Dutton, welcome to the Invisible Roadmap. So how we like to start is tell me a little bit about like literally your origin story, like where you were born and kind of how you grew up and like what little Michael looked like.
Little Michael.
I want to know all about baby Michael.
Well, first of all, we're excited that you are here. I just want to get that acknowledged because it has been 4 years and it's been amazing just to kind of be riding along. To finally have you here is phenomenal, so thank you. My origin story, well, I was born in the UK. I was actually born in Bangor, Wales.
Wow.
My parents were at school there and, packed up and moved to Philadelphia. I think I was about a year and a half old and my sister was 6 weeks, kind of a thing. My dad was at that point doing postdoc studies at the University of Pennsylvania. My mother was an English teacher and I was just a little kid with an English accent on his way to becoming an American kid with an American accent. And yeah, grew up in Philadelphia and, son of a scientist and a teacher. They, of course, kind of led the way and kind of set some serious examples for us and became successful in their various fields. I have a brother and a sister.
But were they both academics?
They were. My father was academic. My mother ended up sort of becoming, working for Westinghouse and got into the HR scene there at a pretty high level. And my dad was, doing some very innovative things in science and biophysics and biochemistry. I went to school for biology. I was a pre-med biology major up in Boston University and graduated a little bit ahead of schedule and never kind of pursued medicine or science or anything and went straight into kind of creative endeavors. I had rock star dreams that I swung for, learned a bunch of things about how to make content in the process, and then eventually moved to New York and started on a path in media, TV producer, and then on the business end of things, and then met Erin, and 12 years ago now.
Oh, you're skipping over a few. I mean, like Jesus. I'm like
you did say I worked at the CNN.
I'm like 2 hours. Yeah, it is funny. When we're doing these podcasts, I always try and do a lot of prep, and I find out about people. And I did turn to my husband Steve, who I also am in business with, and I was like, I think Michael might be CIA because it's quite hard to find. It's not hard to find information on people these days. And I was like, CIA. But then that's interesting. I didn't make this connection. So you both kind of had dreams of medicine originally.
Yeah. And we were both in school in Boston too, which is funny. So we have a few.
So Erin, obviously I've read your book. You've both been on this amazing series, and I feel like I do know a little bit more about your origin story. But talk to me about, because one of the things that talk to the a lot of people who may not know it out there, a little bit about the town you were born in and what your childhood looked like. And then kind of getting to that, because I think one of the reasons that you and I are so drawn, I was about to say drawn to each other, like Erin's drawn to me. I'm drawn to you, I shall not make any assumptions, is because I think there is some similarity. And the big similarity, and I grew up in a place like I could not wait to leave.
Sure.
And I couldn't wait to leave from when I was like little. It was never big enough, this place, for me. And the world that I wanted to see, and I didn't know what I'd be doing at that point. But I always had this idea that like I had to get out. And not that I didn't grow up in a loving family. I did with my single mother and a very Italian happy family. But talk to me a little bit, like take me back. to
Yeah.
the beginning.
Well, you know, I do agree, like our paths feel more similar than Michael's path, and we grew up very differently, and it becomes a topic of conversation a lot between us,
Yeah.
of like how we grew up, how we were raised, and how it made us the people that we are today.
Yeah.
And it is a very different place. You know, I didn't grow up in a place that was like very nurturing to be like, oh, you have these things you want to do and these passions, and let's support that, and let's push you forward, and let's, you know, get you the education you need, and let's move you in these ways. It's like, that was not it. Like, we were just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was running a diner at that point, and you know, he's working like 18-hour days. The last thing he had was time to give us energy and support and morale and kind of lift you up. He's like, you know, he was dragging himself through everything, and he was a bear to be around. Yeah. And so I didn't have that sort of that nurture and that love, and maybe that's a place of, you know, when you want to get away from that place you call home, it's because you're craving something that you're not.
Yeah,
you're
I
not
think that's
feeling
right.
that level of support, or like, you know, feeling like you're being seen or inspired. And I mean, you know, Michael, you know, being able to grow up in this way of having this family of being like, let's, you know, we have goals, we have support, we're going to move you in this way. With me, it was like, I always laugh that I was born in a fry-later.
Yeah.
And, you know, raised in a fry-later and around it all the time. It's just, you just had to keep up and keep going. But it's funny because for a while I would look back and I'd be like really kind of ticked off about like, why did my childhood have to be like this? I mean, there are beautiful moments, don't get me wrong. You know, we worked hard to make those moments magical, but it was a struggle too. And I look at myself now as like, if I didn't have to go through all of that struggle,
You may not
I
be
wouldn't
the-
be the
that's
person
right.
I am. And
Yeah.
the same for you.
Yeah.
If you didn't have to like
Yeah.
push and fight for something
Yeah.
and kind of like forge your own way instead of being handed things.
That's right.
I mean, I'll never forget after getting my first paycheck from my dad, and you know, he'd just sit there and count out the cash and like, here you go.
Cash.
And it was
Cash
like,
is king.
I couldn't believe it was like I worked, I mean, an ungodly amount of hours for that week, and I think he paid me like $200, which is like not, it worked out to be like $6 an hour, whatever it was. And I went out and was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna go buy a bike. And I wasn't old enough to have a license at that point, but it was going to give me that freedom to have that. And it was like this incredible feeling to like go and like, I took my hard-earned money and I went and bought that bike. Or the day that I, you know, did buy my first car. And you're right, like we have the same relationships like kind of with our boys. And, you know, I gave my kid a car.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Oh, and
okay,
no
there's
doubt
a
I'll do
work
the
when you
same
think
thing
you're-
for mine.
that
Yeah.
you want to help them
Yeah.
out. But, you know, when you look back on it, it's, I mean, I don't know why we think like life is supposed to be the straight and narrow and easy little path that we take, because like that's not building us in any way. It's not teaching us. It's not growing us in any way. And all the little, you know, tumbled downs that I had are like, those were things where it was like, I was picking myself up harder. I was picking myself up deeper and moving forward. And I think if we're not given struggle, then like we're not growing.
So going back to, so your dad buys the diner when you're like 5, right?
Yeah, 5.
Yeah. So that's kind of where you have access to like food being made and like, you know, whatever the restaurant, diner, it's a busy, crazy environment to kind of grow up in. So you and your sister kind of grow up in that environment. And then at what point when you're like, you know, in high school, do you start thinking about like what you want to do next?
Well, I was always thinking about, I mean, I wanted to be like a very good girl because I felt like home life was stressful. So it was like, how do I take stress off of my parents' plate? Don't get into trouble, be a good girl. And I mean, even at 12 and 13, I was like, I want to be a doctor. I knew it. You know, I would dress up for career day. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to use my hands. I wanted to be around people.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to be proud of me. And so how do you make your parents proud? You
Get a real
become
job.
a doctor, you become a lawyer,
Exactly.
you get a real job, and you know, you become successful in that way. And that was kind of what I believed that had to be. And all I could think about was getting away from here and moving out of freedom. I mean, I grew up in this town of 719 people on a dirt road. And it was really hard to envision that you could live a good, successful life here, something that was rich, something that was meaningful, and in a place that you would
Because
adore.
you literally can't see the bigger. I mean, it's like a physical, that right? It's, you know.
There's no big picture. The dog's having dreams, sorry.
Oh my God, I thought it was a bird.
It's having
I
a
was like,
dream.
what's happening over there? You're so cute. So keep going.
But sorry.
We like a natural environment. We like a natural environment.
We have a little a running joke around here about like to be a Pip or a Penny. And Michael and I coming together, we came from these two different places, and we compare our lives to dogs that we've had. So there's Pip, and he's this purebred. And
Oh
he's
my
like,
God.
he's had no drama. He grew up like loved by little girls, raised by little kids, and he's like, he knows nothing but like, everything is like just so. And then, Penny was the other dog that came from the pound and was like a little bit of attitude and been through all these things. We're like, are you a Pip or are you a Penny? Doesn't matter, but you're both like really sweet, good dogs.
Exactly.
From,
I love that.
I wouldn't say that I didn't have drama, but anyway, go ahead.
No, I know.
No, everyone does. I mean, again, it's so, that's what you realize. Money does not. And access and any privilege, I think what, you said it actually right, and I think Steve says this, like, does it provide you some kind of safety net? Did he not have to take out college loans, And he really says like that, yes, that's a big deal. I didn't have to take out a college loan. But, there's so much, there's so much that is behind that as well.
What's interesting? So our kids, and I'm really, when we got together, our kids were 7 and 10, and they're now 20 and 23. And so we've seen them both kind of come up, dealing with their families, kind of the two of us coming together, all of that.
In Sweden, they call it bonus families.
Yes, bonus families.
Which I like, bonus.
So, yes, I didn't have to take out a college loan. I'm forever grateful for that. But I am even more grateful now, knowing that, I'm able to put Wyatt through school because I had some good guidance on how to sock away what I needed to cover.
Yeah.
And the same with Erin too. It's like, James went right from high school and got a job and started working. We're helping him, get his footing, get a house and things like that. So, and both boys got cars. They were hand-me-downs. But, it's all about how you position the give and the take.
You just said something really interesting, which is, again, it doesn't matter what you're given, it's what you do with it as well. Again, you see, I've seen them. I've seen businessmen give with lots of money, well, here's your start in life. Now, I've seen some of those people succeed and some of those people fail because ultimately it is, that doesn't really give you anything, right? You can open a restaurant, if the environment is not somewhere people want to come, it's not going to work. So I'm a big believer in that. And I think that's part of why I wanted to tell these stories is because, we're born into these kind of different worlds and families, some of whom make it, some of whom don't. And, where you end up is not necessarily kind of predestined because of
where you thought you would end up.
Exactly.
It's also what you put into it. I mean,
well,
really,
that's mostly
it's
it's mostly
you
what
could
you put
have
into
nothing.
it. Yeah.
Like you could start out like have everything and have nothing. And if you're not investing in your passions or your dreams or your goals, then it's like, what are you doing? I mean, I just don't believe that it ends well if you're not pouring so much into it.
What gives you happiness?
It's hard work that you could have nothing. You pour yourself into something.
Yeah. So you do get into university. You do, right? How old are you when you get a letter saying you're in college?
I was 18, yeah.
So you're 18. Mm-hmm. And I love the story, and I've heard you tell it before, that you got into college in Boston, but that costs more. And your mum said throw the other letter away because she didn't want you to have, she knew if your dad knew that you had that option that you wouldn't.
That if he knew that I had a free boat ride to stay in Maine at the local college, that would be the place. He'd be like, well, that's where you're going.
Yeah.
And, that was the one big thing she kind of did for me that felt like, okay, she's listening.
That's significant. That's a significant, big thing. So you go there and to study pre, I don't even know how it works in America, but you're like on a track to be pre-med essentially. Right. And then what happens?
I got through the first 2 years of college and then got pregnant. And then it was like, okay, everything that I had worked hard for has just come crashing down because now I've got this major decision to make. And, it was a really hard decision to make because on the one hand, if I had chosen to not go through with it, then I would, carry on with that track and I could see that big, bright future. On the other hand, I had this other decision to make and something I was going to have to live with and had to dig deep into my soul.
Yeah.
And So to make that hard decision and say, okay, this is what's happened. I'm going to see this through. Give up on those dreams, move home, go back to that diner, back to that place again.
Yeah.
Move back in with my parents that I had worked so hard to just run away from, to get away from this place, and then to come crashing back and realize, girls like me don't get second chances. I didn't have a safety net. Like, I was my own safety net, and I took that away. And so it was like, I came home and it was like, it doesn't get better from here. I'm not like finishing this through and then going back on track and getting back into school.
Can I ask you a question? Because I'm curious about this. When you were in that 2 years of college, how did you feel? Were you in it going, oh yeah, this is what I want to do? I'm just curious knowing where you've come to now.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, how do you really know yourself at that age?
No,
I
it's
feel like
just
no
like-
one should be going to college until they're 34 years old.
Well,
It's
certainly,
like,
certainly
no
with a
right.
year or two, I would say.
It's
Yeah.
not fair that
you're
there's
so
this
young.
pressure on kids as young adults supposed to know what they're supposed to do, to know what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
To be able to slow those passions. To be very honest, I thought that I wanted to be a doctor because, to be honest, I just wanted to make my parents proud.
Yeah.
Would I have done well with it? Michael's kind of like, maybe you should have been a vet, or maybe you should have been something else. But I knew that I
just 'cause she's
wanted to
amazing
work
with
with my.
animals.
Too late. You know, still in med school.
Well, I knew
Guys,
I wanted
both
to
of you
work with my
together.
hands. But, to be honest, when I was a teenager, and I remember being in middle school, and back then we had a home ec room. And I loved home ec. I wanted to be in there cooking. I wanted to be in there sewing. I wanted to be in there like, ooh, it was like, I was so excited every time it was home ec time. But it wasn't a place that you could tell people. I never told anyone that. I know those
Because it
feelings
probably
now.
felt domestic.
It
or
was
like,
not even that, but it was like, if you were going to choose a path that was a vocational school, it meant that you were the kid who was sinking to the bottom. That's where kids went who weren't going to be successful. You were gonna work and making school lunch. You were going to be a carpenter, and that wasn't a track that was allowed to be celebrated. And now I'm just like, why are we not celebrating those trade skills? Why are we
totally
not
agree.
celebrating people who want to cook, who want to create? Because, I look at, like, I found success in cooking. I run one of the hardest restaurants in the entire country to get into. And I dropped out of college, but guess what? I got an honorary degree from Colby College years later, and it was like,
You did?
Yes.
Well, I didn't know that. I love that.
I went to go to graduation.
An honorary degree.
It was like a whole
Again, go back
it
to
was like
mine.
a thing.
I'm
It
going
was
to
like,
try and get an honor, because I always feel a bit other than I didn't.
I got.
I mean, someone should give me a degree,
Right?
or something. Did you love college? I talk to my husband about this all the time, and he just says, I loved college life. He thinks it's just a time to basically socialize and kind of have that experience.
So a couple things. One, going back to the age, I was 16 when I was.
Oh, so you're a
kinda-
smarty pants.
No, I just started young.
Okay.
It was the
you're
UK,
smart. Yeah.
But
It's not the
no, but it was a weird. And I, like Erin, I chose the biology science path because I thought that that's what my parents. Anytime I ever said, I want to pursue music or I want to pursue creative arts or whatever, I was faced with the odds. Well, the odds of that happening are what are you going to do if it doesn't work out? I heard that was a thing.
Also not too late.
I know. I'm quietly working
No,
on it.
I'm
but-
serious. I mean,
but
it's in you.
the other thing is that I did enjoy. I still have a couple of close friends that I made there. I didn't pick though. My choice of school was sort of hasty. I wasn't old enough to really grasp
you're not.
where to go and what to do. But I do give it credit for, and this is something that I credit my parents, like that academic mindset. It taught me to think.
Yeah.
Even though I studied biology and I never went to med school and I never kind of pursued that life, it taught me how to think.
Yeah.
I know how to write. I know how to
that's
think.
right.
I know how to do
See,
math.
that's, I think, the number one. I always say to my kids, I just want you to learn to be like critical thinkers. That's all I want.
Yes, and I've taken all of that and I've just applied it to this new world order where I've tried to kind of sometimes shoehorn logic into abstract.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think really makes sense for me and Erin is like I have all of that tool set in my hip pocket.
Yeah.
And we bring it to bear in
Yeah.
how we've how we've meshed our lives together, the decisions we make and all of that. So you learn how to think, you learn how to place bets, you learn how to bet on yourself and your partners.
Don't you think you
swing
also
it.
like are either you have a natural curiosity or not?
100%.
Because I know people that don't.
Yeah.
But I think that's like inherent in people, like a curiosity for knowledge, for the world,
Yeah.
for travel.
I'm incessantly on. I hope I always am learning
Yeah.
to the final
Yeah.
day. I always think I can do better today than
Yeah.
I did yesterday, even though, you screwed up left, right, and
Yeah.
center. It's an interesting thing. I will say though, just listening, and it's funny hearing you talk about the idea of safety nets is actually fluid to me.
Yeah.
I would say, when we met, Erin's parents were still together. She was parked on their farm. So even though the context might have been different, there was still a place to go. They still provided that. There are some people out there that don't even have that. So the definition of a safety net, I think we both were fortunate in that way. And in relative terms, you had a place to.
There's always a place to go home.
You had a place to go home, and that's the definition of safety net. Can you go somewhere, no matter what your relationship is with your parents, if it's broken or not? They gave you that, and they gave you the guidance. For me, I could brag all day about this person here, and the decisions she made, and the way she did it, and the life she built, because it's informed everything that I'm doing in my life now. It's given me the inspiration. And you think about these key decisions, like having a child, like starting a restaurant, like building a business, like leaning in.
Yeah.
It's totally aspirational.
I think it is, and I think it is. I mean, I've never said this to anyone, but my husband knows this, but I chose not to have a child at 18 when I got pregnant, and I just got into university, and I didn't want to go home.
Right.
That was my path, and I just knew in my heart that, just like I knew, I didn't get married till I was almost 40. I wouldn't have survived a marriage younger than that. I knew that, I think my husband and I had 3 broken engagements between us. But we both, I think, that was the time we were supposed to, there was just so much living we wanted to do before that and needed to do.
Need to.
And I think, and by the way, I still dropped out of university and chose a different path. And I think you're totally right. I think, look, it's somewhere to go back to. I think the thing that I think about all the time is access, is because even in my business, at some point I realized I'm only hiring even the assistants who went to Ivy League schools. I'm like, what am I doing? I have to let people in the door like me, because how did someone let me in the door, right? And I'm sure you guys think about that all the time. It's not about where they went to school, right? It's about the person.
Yeah.
Don't want to fast forward through. There's so much, obviously, that happened next. And, one of the things that I say to young people all the time is and certainly this is true of my life, and I know it's true of both of yours, is just expose yourself to as many things as possible. And sometimes the path does become clear. Just try things. Be afraid to, I don't know if you have this. I've never been afraid to take risks because I've never been afraid to be poor because I was, right? And so I think that feels like, so you come back, you're like my mum, single mum, you are working back in the diner, and then at some point is the catering job the first thing that you get? Yeah.
Yeah, the catering one was the first one that I sort of broke
Yeah.
away. I had resigned myself to, at that point, I was 21, single mom. I had really no other skills or things I knew how to do but to cook.
Yeah.
And so it was I just resigned myself to I'm kind of okay at doing this. I've been doing it. I started working on the line with my dad when I was 12 years old. So I had 10 years of culinary experience that I didn't even know that it was kind of building within me. But then having the opportunity to sort of break into the food world in a different way, that I wasn't just making fried fish baskets, that I went to this other company and was able to see food in more of a beautiful way. And that's when I started to realize wow, wait a minute, it is that creative side of things, that you can make food your own. I could use this, build upon the skills that I had and find passion in doing something that I loved. And also, it took me a while to recognize what this feeling was, and until I was
Well, you probably
later age.
resisted it a little bit.
Totally.
Too.
I mean, if anything, I the last thing I ever thought that I would do was be running a restaurant because I felt so, it was just, growing up in a restaurant was hard. The work was hard. We spent school, being after school there all the time. And it's just like you lived in that restaurant and it wasn't like a great home life. It was,
well, because the
going
demands
home
of
late.
it is so
Your
intense.
parents are working hard, you're getting home late, you smell like a fry later or a cheeseburger all the time. But, to be able to recognize that feeling inside of you when there's something that just makes you like tingle, with like joy or
Gives you
excitement.
joy,
And you're like, what
exactly.
is that?
Yeah.
What is that feeling? And I was washing them aside, I think, when you're younger, because you don't really know, or you don't like, you see that as in, what do they call it in yoga? It's a sky hook. You just grab onto it and you go with it. And I wasn't grabbing onto those little hooks of passion that were all in front of me my entire life until I started to slow down and pay attention to it. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then I started to find real beauty in it, and then made it personal and was able to start to create things that were from my mind and from my taste buds. And then it was like I was wielding this power, and then I was really kind of feeding into it and finding that special place for it. And it's something I hope that like our kids find. It's like, how do you train them early to be like, hey, guess what? I wasted the first 35 years of my life not seeing that passion that was right in front of me on a plate, sitting right there for me to take.
But don't you think they have to, the journey is like, you just have to let them know that like they can, like whatever it is that brings you joy. So you work at the catering company and then you start the supper club first.
Well, no, that took a little. So it was,
Oh no, you're waitressing.
Yeah, it was waitressing. It was bartending. It was doing all the things. I actually had to move myself out of the kitchen because it didn't pay enough.
Yeah.
It was no paying at that point.
No tips.
$12 an hour or something, and I couldn't do it. It was like I was a single mom. I had diapers. I had rent. I had all of these things. So I started waiting tables, and so that kind of took me. It was still restaurant work, but for me now, I look at it now like the hospitality side of it. It really gave me that opportunity to be on the other side of the stove and to see people's reactions and to work on, serving them and caring for them.
Well, communicating with I always say that working in a restaurant is the best experience for anyone. I was never a waitress. Apparently they would never let me be a waitress. I was like they let me be like a hostess, but I was like, which is a stupid word anyway. I was like, take them to their tables. I was like, but no one ever let me be a waitress. But working in a restaurant, I was like, I would say it gave me the foundation for like, number one, how to appreciate these beautiful things, but also to communicate with people.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Problem solve, communicate, all of those things, putting up with difficult people. And, but yeah, so that, really that at that point I was like, okay, my life is heading in this direction. It's going to be in food, and it's going to be, and I found joy in caring for people in that way too, and being able to watch them experience these lovely meals and make them feel doted upon, and find little ways to, just people find enjoyment. I mean, restaurants are kind of magical places, and the spot that they feed us in this way of that you can like nurture people, and it's all just with food, but it's so
well, it's not just with food though, is it? Because you talk about this and I believe this. Like, I'm not a fine dining person because I tend to find those environments kind of cold, whereas I'll go to like the best trattoria in Italy and they'll serve me pasta in a frying pan. It'll be the best night of my life because that's not the only ingredient, right? What matters, it's on the plate, it's the ingredients that like the environment and everything else around it, which is, part of what you guys have created here, right? And that's the thing that I really think about all the time, because that's like going into a hotel, right? There's just something, if you go in, and it doesn't matter if someone has created put the right ingredients into that, you can have an incredible experience. So you waitress, and then you start the supper club, which I think.
Yeah, I got to a
Am I
point.
skipping ahead?
No, I mean, it was a long time of waitressing, a long time of kind of feeling out, being in the restaurant. And, it was getting to a point, I was turning 30 years old.
Yeah. And are you married at this point or not?
I had gotten married at that point.
Like at 20, in your 20s?
Yeah, I got married around 25.
So, yeah.
25.
You were married before?
Not me.
I do forget about it a lot.
No, it's not me. Just a lot of broken engagements.
wait a minute,
a lot
what?
of broken engagements.
You were married to someone else.
Yeah.
Were you married before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
We both had full chapters anyway.
Yeah.
But really getting to that point of turning 30 years old and feeling like I was just craving this like need to like, I don't know, just put a stake in the ground and say like, I needed to create something. I needed to make something. And I was just constantly trying to prove something to myself. And I'd felt that feeling for a long time and I didn't know exactly what it was. And I was like, you know what? I'm not at the point now where I can go back to culinary school. Like my parents are definitely not, they were really not wanting to put me through school when I was 18. They're definitely not going to do it at 30. I am a young mom now. Like I can't just take off on my kid and like go to school. So how am I going to do this? So it was like, well, I could start really scrappy. And I'm a risk taker, but like to a degree. Like I can take a risk to a point. And so having this slow and start way of thinking about starting a supper club. It was like, let me just go mess around in the kitchen and actually see if I could be any good at this without like showing up to the catering company or to the restaurant. Like, let me just like go cook my food, go make my food. And I'll just do it on Saturday nights. I'll see if anyone will show up and make it by donation and open the doors and see, let's just see what happens. I'm craving this like need to play.
I love hearing you talk about like kind of begging these 16 people to show up, and I'm like, where are they now? They're begging you. So you're begging some mates, as you say.
Begging friends to come over. And I do once in a while. But begging even friends to come over, and my friends are like, why are we paying you to come over to dinner? And I was like, well, but I'm going to feed you really well, and you're just going to help pay for ingredients, and this would be a great start.
Were they generous with their donations?
They gave the minimum donation.
Yeah, but did it cover your ingredients?
Yeah, I broke even.
That's what I assumed.
I had to pay like one friend to come help do dishes and wait tables with me, like, a little minimal bit, and pay for the ingredients. And I had a little bit of rent that I had to pay for the space. And so, it was a wash at the end of it after I took every last dollar.
Until they realized.
Yeah, until they realized what. But so, that's when I started to feel myself really come alive. Like, oh, wait a minute, I've kind of found my place. And pretty quickly after that, I wasn't having to beg people to come to dinner. That the word was getting out. People were really interested in coming and trying this, and seeing what I was doing in this apartment on the second floor in the middle of this tiny little town. And
was that in Belfast?
That was in Belfast. And
that's America, people, Maine, not Ireland. For those that are listening, from Ireland.
Belfast, Maine.
And from there, it was just like, things just started to happen. My confidence started to like kick up. Finally, I had been licking like my emotional scars for so long of feeling like I had failed and failed and failed and could not catch a break. And it was the first time in my life I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm finding my break, and I'm finding maybe what I'm supposed to be doing. And really being able to I was making people proud. They were eating these dinners that I spent all week creating and planning and working on, and I would get to cook them, create them, put it down in front of them, and watch them have this like moment of joy. And that was filling me up from all of the deficit that I had from my childhood, my everything, all those feelings of feeling like never enough. I felt like I was enough when I put that plate on that table and I watched them enjoy it.
You opened a restaurant, and then you were on the fucking crazy treadmill in some ways of like this thing, and you couldn't keep up, right? Oh, you needed help, or, and so you're also in I don't want to tell your story for you, but I also don't want to force you to, tell it again. You're in a very toxic, emotionally, physically toxic relationship while you're having this. You should be having the most joyous time.
Well, I don't know. Restaurants are really hard, and
they are. But you know what I mean. But combine it. Like, I mean, you saw it even with your own dad, right? Like one thing, like, is just no room. Like one thing can tip you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's running a restaurant is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It is a sacrifice, and I think some people, it's hard to understand unless you've done it. Like, you sacrifice time with your family. There are moments with my son that I will never get back, and now I realize, now I can have a more appreciation for my dad, who was a bear when I was growing up, to be able to actually see, oh my gosh, like, I've actually become a bit of this person. I can see why he was this person. If you're working this amount of hours, and you have this amount of pressure, and you have staff, and you have, all of this.
When you justify it because you're doing it. Well, I'm doing it for them. I need to make it's a lot of things, right? It's so complicated.
You get in this crazy work wheel, and then you're just stuck, and then you add in a toxic relationship on top of it. So you're not going home at your end of your day and going like, okay, let me fill myself back up. You're actually being torn further down.
Yeah.
And, that's where that perfect soup of just, disaster for
Lies.
me was in my life. Yeah.
So we can fast forward through, and you're also dealing with custody stuff. So like, everything you basically worked so hard for is like kind of taken from you.
Right.
And at this, you're how old at this point? Like
30, 31.
Yeah,
31,
still so young. Oh my God. So then I do love the, it's my favorite story, favorite thing, because I love the Airstream story, because I just love this idea that you can create from anywhere, and you can build something big from something small, and depending on who's building it, right? So I'm so desperate to get to like this, because I'm like, but there's so much story, but I'm desperate to get to
That's okay.
this. I mean, it's kind of, this is where this roadmap like can be so winding and long. So,
well, I think about that,
Yeah.
I mean, even, so the Airstream came after losing the restaurant and everything.
Yeah.
And clearly I was still figuring out my inner strength and my inner confidence, because when I lost my first restaurant, I curled up in fetal position, and I did not want to be seen again, because I was like, I just lost everything that I worked my ass
whole
off,
life.
and it's all gone. And I honestly still believed that it was the walls of that restaurant that were defining me. I clearly hadn't figured out with myself, like, yo girl,
And
like you're the
Yeah.
one driving this bus the
Yeah.
whole time, and just because you lost the wheels,
Yeah.
like you can go
Yeah.
just hop on something else and like
That's
bring
right.
yourself to that table
Yeah.
again. And so, all of those lessons that I was able to learn through going through that. And then I'll never forget, finally fast forwarding, going to the Airstream, then coming back home again, deflated for the second time in my life. Great, I'm back at mom and dad's again. I'm back, tail between my legs again. But then, finding this space here and opening my restaurant. And I'll never forget one of the first nights, and I was cooking here at the stove. And I'm cooking away, and I'm, throwing butter in the pan. I'm having this joyful, like, I'm back. I've created walls again, and I've got this space, and I'm feeling settled. And I turned and I looked, and right from the stove, I'm looking right here, and the waterfall is like rushing by, and I'm like, I'm cooking here. And I'm turning and I'm looking at this waterfall, and I'm like, I wouldn't be here in this place and staring at this waterfall if I hadn't cried 2 zillion tears that created a river that pushed me downstream, that sent me to this place. And then, brought me to Michael and finding true love and all these things. It's like, I used to be so angry about the things that had happened to me. And I felt like, why couldn't I?
Yeah.
Why couldn't I have that, have this totally different life? And then it was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine what a boring, sad
It's
life
so
life
that's
is?
it. You
Like,
just said it, and I love that moment you just described, because like I call them dreams come true moments. I love this story because it's like you're in Freedom, Maine. You're in New York City, correct? Living in New York City, so you match.
Well, not really. I mean,
Tell me everything.
Well, hold on. Okay, you go. You go.
So I'm living in the Airstream, like literally sleeping on a cot. And my therapist is like, so, at some point you have to move on. Have you thought about it? And I was like, no, not really. And she's like, well, why don't you try online dating? Because I was like, I live in a town of 700 people, on a dirt road.
Yeah.
I don't see the,
Yeah.
the dating possibilities here. Like, where am I going to go meet a guy walking down the dirt road? And so it's late one night, so I hop on to Match.com, and then I start looking at my circle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I went to high school with all of these guys.
Oh my
And then
God.
the same moment, you're like,
radius.
oh
You can
my
set a
gosh,
radius.
stop it. And he's like, oh, he's got a beard now.
So
And I
you
was like,
set a radius.
Yeah.
I set a radius,
Oh my
and
God.
I knew all the people. I was like, I went to high school with all of these guys. I can't do this. And then so I kept expanding the radius, expanding the radius,
Oh my God.
expanding the radius.
You should have
expanding-
called your book "Expanding the Radius."
I
Probably the next
finally got to, New York City.
You really expanded the radius.
450 miles.
So my radius is set at 450
Oh my
miles.
God.
Michael's is set for like 4 blocks.
Oh my God, I can't. This story.
It was so. But I think a couple things. While Erin was going through her Airstream phase and demolishing it and trying to find her culinary footing, I was also going through like a divorce, classic New York.
And how old was your son at this point?
He was 6.
Right. That's hard. That's tough.
That was the most.
That's really tough.
I mean, there's a wound on my heart that I know is never going to fully go away, and it goes back to that day where his mother and I had to sit him down and
Oh,
kind of
God.
break this news. but it did take a couple of years to. It was a classic New York
Yeah.
situation. Here's one thing I do know: when his mother and I were in the throes of it all, we did try. You do the therapy thing, you have the this, you do the that, and there was a moment where it changed from trying to salvage the marriage to just how do you be good co-parents.
Yeah, that's right.
We got tools. We still have tools. We have a rapport, and she's remarried, and everything's great. And for Wyatt, he knows that his parents are civil, and it's good. So I feel proud
You
that
should.
we were able to check that box. But it was a brutal time, and it was in New York. I mean, it was a very tumultuous. This was 2011, 12, in there, same exact window that Erin was going through her upheaval as well. And hers was on a different level because of all of the other kind of factors. But there was a moment where once the dust had settled out and I started dating again, in New York City, online dating wasn't even something that I'd considered as an like why?
Because everyone's so close.
Everyone's right here, and
And there's a lot of people.
I was in this mode where I was having a good career and had a thing, and I was happily trying to become a better father, a single father for Wyatt, and but eventually it's hard, even though you live in a big city and you've got access to all sorts of different types of people. So the online thing kind of came up, same type of. I wasn't talking to a therapist, but our friends were like, you should try. And so I went on.
God, thank God.
It is the sliding doors of it all.
Yeah.
And this is a funny thing. I mean, we talk about this. Like, at one point, there was a ballerina, a doctor, and a chef in my orbit. I didn't know that the chef was 450 miles away because I had set my radius to like a tiny.
But
40
so you can still match if one of you is at your radius.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good to know.
And there were these beautiful photos of a beautiful woman sitting on an island looking at with a boat, and all the things that were close to my heart.
You say this, but he was not winking at me.
Well, so this is 2013 now. This is before
you weren't swiping.
There was no swipe left. But it was one of the most I remember being kind of like, this is weird. Like, how I'm talking to somebody that I don't know. Is this even real?
So you start emailing, and then
I gave you a little wink.
He winked.
Yeah.
And we had a quick exchange on Match.com.
But I was broke, and I was about to bounce my bank account. I was like, I gotta get off Match now.
Oh my God.
Because I actually did bounce my checking account, and my mom at that point was like just helping me out in any way. She came knocking at the door on the Airstream, and she's like, listen, you just bounced, I just got a bounce, you owe $35 for a bounce.
I thought it was 48.
Whatever, no, that was the fee.
Oh, that was the fee.
So it was $48 a month, and I was like, wait, I quit, because I actually had quit Match.
Yeah.
But come to find out, they auto-renew you, which I didn't know they did, so I bounced my bank account, so I owed them $48 plus the $35 fee, and then,
See, I wonder.
So I was re-upped, and then literally 3 days later, Michael and I started.
But I wonder if you hadn't run out of money, would you still? Maybe you were winking at me.
Maybe I would have been winking all over the place.
Oh yeah, and a pace. She was desperate. She was like,
I gotta get
She was like, I gotta match. I gotta win.
Wink as fast. I was like, I gotta get these winks.
So she does the.
You were the only one that responded, and I'm kidding.
Maybe I'm sure not. But we talked about some. Erin was coming down to New York every once in a while. She was working on the manuscript for the first cookbook, so she had a reason. So in my mind. New York wasn't. She had a reason to be there, so I didn't realize that she wasn't living in the city. But we connected, and we really began this beautiful courtship.
Without meeting first.
Without meeting,
Yeah.
it was all through emails and texts, and then eventually phone calls, and it was the distance kind of kept oxygen in the conversation. We
Well,
weren't.
you were getting to know each other.
We were getting to know each
It
other.
also helped
but
us
in a
as
really
we
nice
were
way.
smoldering from both of these marriages that had fallen apart. And I think like you got to take some time after you go through that to kind of like really get back to yourself. And like you do need to have breath. And I was so terrified of being alone at that point.
Yeah.
And then to be able to have that time that was like, okay, it kept breath
Yeah.
that we were
I'll be
able
okay.
to continue
Yeah.
on like working on ourselves without like jumping into another
Totally.
relationship and just being like this all the time. That
Yeah.
distance, I thought, was really crucial for us to continue to work
Now we
on
don't leave
ourselves.
each other's
They're like,
side,
I can't. We could have been.
Oh my God.
There's some full circle moments here with this because Erin, when we met, so it's a couple things. We're texting, funny,
Yeah.
all funny, great, laughing,
Yeah.
you know, text. I haven't even met her in person yet, no idea. And finally she says, let's have a drink. And I said, okay, where do you want to meet? This is again, I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Belfast, Maine, or the Lost Kitchen or anything. And
Have you been to Maine ever at this point?
no, I had. And I say, well, you know, when you want to, she's no, let's do it over the phone. You know, I said I had my son and she had hers, and you know, I'm thinking, because that was a big criteria for me. I wanted to be with somebody who knew what it was to be a parent.
Yeah.
That was like, there's some
Yeah.
absolute non-negotiables when it comes to that, and I needed somebody who could relate. So we had this, and she says, well, let's just get on the phone and have a drink, and
Like
have a
visual
conversation.
phone or
no,
just
no,
phone?
no, this is over the phone. This was again,
No.
we
We never.
never FaceTimed, or
I
don't
never
even know
saw
if
any
FaceTime
real
was a-
like real full pictures of your face until I met
all
you
right,
too.
easy. But so we do this, and I do remember, you know, I had always, for years, even during my first marriage, I would go looking for, I was curious and fascinated by Maine. My gut, my in the core of my being, I was like, something is pulling me, something is pulling me. I'd go looking for houses. I called my brother up and said, hey, let's go buy a house. And this is years ago, and the property values were super low. Or I'd go looking for a small boat to buy, and I would be wooden boat searches up here. I was constantly visiting Maine through the internet. And for like 5 or 10 years, and it just
Oh
never,
my
you know,
God.
this just was drawn. And then so when we're on this call, and I'd had a whiskey, I'd had 2 whiskey, and we're talking about everything. We're talking about our kids, the trial and tribulation of divorce, you know, career, work. She was working on the book thing, and the restaurant. She was in between TLK1 and what is now this iteration. And I finally says, wait, let's get together. And she says, well, I'm not in New York all the time.
If at all, but
But she made in my mind, I'm thinking she's kind of splitting her time.
yeah.
That was the
Now the
you know.
truth comes
I didn't tell
out.
him I was like living
Yeah,
in a
no, I
trailer,
won't.
sleeping on a cot
I tell
at
those
my
white guys
parents'
all the
house.
time.
And
No.
gross.
So
Yeah. That was not necessary.
So I said, well, where are you? Where are you right now? She's like, I live in Maine when I'm not in New York.
What?
I know you did. Not quite like
When
that.
I'm not
But
in New
that's what I heard in
Yeah.
my mind. She didn't say it, but I was like, I'm thinking, oh, this is cool. But when she said I am from Maine, now I'm 3 whiskeys in, and I literally, I just felt it. I was like, you know, this is how it happens. And I in my mind, I literally, to this day, I can hear just the quiet unlatching of a door in my mind, and my spirit walked through it. I just
Yeah, you
walked
knew.
away
Yeah.
in my heart from, and I was like, she's from Maine, and I said, I'm coming up tomorrow. Now that was the whiskeys talking. I went into the office and I bought a plane ticket, but I didn't go up that next day. 2 weeks later, I was scheduled to come to Maine, and again, flying to Portland, not knowing where Freedom, where Belfast was in relation to any of it. And for 2 weeks, we talked every night, whether it be for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours. We were having these conversations, and it was just getting to know each other. And then finally, on the eve before I was to fly up, we have one of our little nightly check-ins, and I said, hi, you know, I was in bed and the whole thing. She said, I just wanted to call you and say goodbye. And I said, okay, but I'm coming up tomorrow. I'm coming to Maine tomorrow. She's like, I know, but whatever happens tomorrow when we see each other in person, this thing that we have created through our conversations on the phone and emails and text is not going to stay the same. It can't stay the same. And I got chills. And so I thought, oh shit, she's right. And then I got nervous. For the first time, I was like nervous. And I knew that I was dealing with somebody who had presence and had a grasp of reality. And she was right. It was either, she said, it's either going to get better or it's going to get worse. This thing, this energy. And I tell people, I fell in love with her on the phone. In one of those early phone calls, we were in. And luckily, we met in person, and that was 12 years ago.
Do you think that was like you self-protecting as well?
I mean,
It can't get better than that.
I was feeling a little sad because I knew that we had kind of created this little dream world. We'd become pen pals and, you know, talk on the phone for a month before we met each other. And like, I was confiding in this person. He'd become my friend. He'd become like someone who's like, we were checking in every day all the time. And I was just like, I'm sad that this is going to end because like, there's a very good chance it doesn't get better. and I was going to miss that person. Luckily, got better.
And have you literally been together ever since? Yes, obviously. Yeah. But how soon after that, just like fast forward, do you move to Maine?
Well, if you ask,
Slow burns.
Well, within a year we bought the house.
Right.
And that, you know, that was a big symbolic move. You know, we had, you know, Erin called me up the summer. You know, we'd been together for maybe 8 months, and I was still down in New York. He's like, man, you want to buy a house? I was like, yeah, okay, and sends me these photos and then brings me up, and it was nothing like I'd experienced. It was an old farmhouse in the middle of rural Maine that was so different from anything I'd ever thought that
It needed work.
It needed work.
Yeah, because you've been thinking about buying a house in Maine Paramount for years.
Well, I have, but not quite. Mine was sort of closer to the wall. I had different, but it just, you know how these were these moments that we both were kind of following gut. We were both following feeling and intuition and instinct.
And you're also navigating being parents as well.
Navigating being parents. And so that was what really, you know, Wyatt at the time was 8. So he had
God, he's still so young.
Yeah, he was still young, and Jane was 11, and so I had to stay in. I had to have a footprint in New York because of that.
Of
I had obligations.
But we joked that we actually did not move in together full time until a couple of years after we were married.
Yeah, and it does.
And then when did you get married?
We got married in 2018, so we got together in
practically newlyweds still.
7 years. We just had 7, but you know we were together for 5 years.
Right.
And I think that it was our second time, each of us. We had these young boys who were on
So you shouldn't go to college, shouldn't get married, shouldn't do any of these big life things until you're 34 years old. You know, you got to get all of the things.
So many lessons here today. And how did the boys acclimate with all of that?
Differently, but good.
Yeah.
You know, you're bringing a family together, and for us, you know, the idea of like getting married again, it was as much for them as it was for us because we wanted them to be able to say like, oh, this is who this person is, like as opposed to like, oh, this is my dad's girlfriend or this is my mom's boyfriend. It was like we wanted them to know that this was solid, that we were here, that this was a foundation, that we're not going anywhere. We're building a life, we're building a home, we're building, you know, all of this is like
commitment.
Yeah, commitment.
In every sense.
I love
the
that.
deepest definition of the word.
And where is the like at the point when you met? Where is the restaurant at this point? Like what? How does this place, this amazing place?
When we met, I had signed the lease and was starting to put everything together in this place. So I was like, listen, I'm starting this project, and.
This is when I knew she wasn't moving to New York.
Like no other project.
Yeah, that's when Michael realized, he's like, wait, okay, how does this end? Because she is not moving.
Yeah, that's not a part-time job.
I'll tell you though, it was, I mean, this room was a dusty space, and Erin was building tables and ordering stoves, and I remember standing in here and the contractor was arguing with her about the hood over I mean, it was, you could see, I feel very fortunate that I've been along for the ride since those moments, because you could see the.
You were here for the first dinner, you know.
I was here for the first dinner. I was, you know, but all of the pieces, and at the time, you know, I didn't have a bearing on what she had done in Belfast in the 18 months that initial version of the Lost Kitchen meant to the community. I mean, it was powerful.
I mean, you know, I don't think anyone who hasn't built a business doesn't understand what it is to build a business and also what it is to sustain a business. And it's really hard, right? Because suddenly you're paying people and, you know, people have to come. So my understanding is, I think this is right, the place we sit now, Lost Kitchen, you didn't immediately start with postcards being the only way people could get in.
I really thought this was going to be a place where you would come in and you would get like a muffin or a scone and a cup of coffee, and you would hop on your computer and have free Wi-Fi. I really thought it was going to be this quiet in the middle of nowhere place. But it was really heartwarming to me that when people started to hear that I was restarting, because I was off grid for a year, just picking up my life. I mean, I was a smoldering mess. And it was like, wait a minute. This place that we loved that disappeared literally overnight. Doors were locked and the place was jamming. Like the restaurant was popular. People were coming. We were filling the place up. Doors locked overnight. Girl disappears for a year and then reemerges in this middle of nowhere. All of a sudden, I'm getting these messages saying like, "I can't wait to eat your food again." Like, and it's so touching. You know, it's like I can't wait for this meal. And I was like, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, I guess I better. You know, they want dinner." And then so we started with the dinners and they were showing up. It was like all of that clientele that I'd built, they were so hungry to like come back and have that feeling again. And not just the food, the feeling, the environment that we were creating. And so, you know, the doors opened and people started streaming through, and then word started to pick up more and more. And it was really like by year 3, we were like, we have to change something because this has gotten, you know, year 1, we were booked out 2 weeks in advance. And I remember someone coming to me in town saying, "Erin, like we heard a rumor you're booked out for 2 weeks." And I was like, we are.
That was exciting.
We were so excited. Like, we booked out
I mean,
for
I
2
get
weeks.
it.
Like you were calling the restaurant for that. And we were like, oh, this is crazy. Like, and then the next year it was like, we booked out for the whole season.
Oh my
Like,
God.
what do we do? And then year after that, that's when everything kind of crashed, when we opened the phone lines and we couldn't keep up with it. And we were up.
And then
for
you
like,
probably feel kind of bad. Like that's probably, it's a great feeling, but also like, you know, you feel like you're letting people down. Like,
cried through the day and night because I was crying because it was like, oh my gosh, we've reached the restaurant successful, but like, you know, I'm listening to like people who are calling in at 3 a.m. trying to get through because they've been dialing for hours and hours trying to make a reservation, and they sounded miserable. And I'm like, I'm letting everyone down and I can't beat everyone. And that was the frustrating part. And that's when, you know, we were just like, okay, no more phone calls. Like, I need to slow this place down because she's speeding up again. And I was so worried it was going to do what it did, that big, quick, fast burn like the first restaurant, you know? 18 months.
Yeah, so you've had that.
How do I slow it
happen.
down?
Yeah,
How do I
so
stop
you
everything
know.
and slow it down? And it was like, okay, let's go old school and let's not go online and just turn this into like, send me a postcard if you want to come and we'll just pull your name out of the hat. I assumed we would get less at that point because I said, less. Exactly. Who's going to send a postcard? I need less people.
Doing the math.
And then it was like, oh shoot.
I remember doing the math.
They sent
Like how many postcards?
Yeah, I was like, we need X number of postcards. We'd done, you know, Erin's always kind of kept things fluid, like how many dinners, how many months, how many weeks, which days a week, blah, blah, blah. And this is all pre-COVID. We were sharing the building, we were leasing it, so we had different financial setups, and it was a whole different program. And I just remember thinking, okay, if we're going to go to postcards from phone calls, we're probably going to lose people, because it was like, who wants to go through the hassle? And I was like, all right, well, if we get half as many, or even 75% fewer cards.
still have more than we ever
Yeah,
had,
we still be able to do. I was like, okay, let's go for it. I remember we talked about this, and it was.
And then it doubled.
And we got
Like, oh,
twice-
What's it like when the first so does the post office call you and say, oh, here's the first lot of postcards?
So I remember the first day of showing up, and I was like, oh, I was really nervous. I was like, oh God, what if I go in the post office?
No
And
one's
got,
written.
Well, I went down in the mailbox, and there were no postcards, and I was like, oh my God. And then I realized they couldn't deliver them all because it couldn't fit in the mailbox. And I went up to the post office to like see what was up, and she's like, did you bring your car? And I was like, what do you mean you bring your car?
I'm gonna cry. Like it's like
They
I
had
think it's like a celebrity who like suddenly became a celebrity, and like they, you know, old school, when you see those old movies and they got all this fan mail and it's like their life-changing moment. It's like
bins
fan mail
upon bins, and I like filled up the back of my SUV with these bins, and they helped me carry that. And I was like, oh my, what have we done now? And it was like, holy, it was Valentine's
then you had
Day
to have
on
a
fire.
system.
Yeah, and then then it made it easy. We'd pull one, we'd make a call.
Yeah.
We have about 250,000 postcards now collected. They, you know, it kind of ratcheted up when the show came out. You know, the exposure came.
Yeah. The show, The Lost Kitchen.
The Lost Kitchen
on
show.
Discovery.
Yeah, and so that obviously amplified our people's awareness of us. But it's been an interesting part of the journey, and I think, you know, when we talk about all of the steps and all of the things that kind of came together that make something like this happen, and the chances you take and the decisions you make and the dog legs in life, you know, I mean, I certainly left home and came to freedom, and Erin kind of came back through a circuitous way to find herself and find mission and all of that. But these cards are just grounding. Like, it takes all of that inspiration.
Oh, it's all stories, right?
It's
just
all
like
stories, but
all
it
stories.
humbles you to know.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because you think that
I
you
mean,
think your life is crazy, and then you read somebody's.
That's right. Yeah. So here we are now, like the Lost Kitchen. We skipped over a whole thing, like in 2020, but in 2021 you released a book, a memoir about your own life, which I was lucky enough to option the film rights to. The movie's coming sometime very soon, everyone, for all those listening or watching, I promise you. But that's how we all met. You wrote this incredible, beautiful memoir about your life, which is super inspiring, but also I think it's going to really, a lot of people are going to really relate to it. You build these beautiful cabins now, and people can have a whole other experience. So like you continue to kind of evolve that. Just talk a bit about, just as we kind of wind up, like what the last like couple of years has been and how the business has evolved and where you are now.
Michael and I always joke that like my foot is on the gas all the time, and Michael's just sitting on the passenger seat, just pumping the brakes all the time. And it's like, I'm speeding, he's pumping the brakes, and so we make a good partnership in that way. So I feel like I'm gassed down all the time, and you know that is the hard part about starting your own business, and especially, you know, a restaurant and keeping it relevant. Like people get bored of things, and you have to keep inventing and reinventing. And for me, like that's inspiring for me to keep trying new things. And I'm never just satisfied with like, okay, I did this, and like, okay, I want to keep doing more things. So we've been dabbling in all sorts of things, and Michael keeps pumping the brakes, and I keep accelerating. So
I mean, just, it's funny, but it's not exactly how I feel. I do take a quick look. I will pause before, you know, I might pump the brakes, but trust me, the brakes.
His new phrase, well, it's not his new phrase. I finally realized after all these years together, he says to me all the time, "What are we doing? What are we doing? Like, what are we doing now? What are we doing now?"
And why? But I think that like this is what I realized early on, that we actually made our partnership is more than just obviously romantic.
Yeah.
And our skill sets and our backgrounds and our dreams, our experiences, both professional and in life, really do kind of line up. I'm just maybe take more of a considerate move, but I'm still the one that packed up and moved from New York to. So I know what it is to think through. I have a slower burn rate.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why like you and Steve. You know what I mean?
It's like the way it's literally exactly the same.
But we end up in the same spot.
Yin and yang. I just think it's all going to go away, and I don't know if you guys feel that.
I worry about it all the time, and I think especially if you're working in your profession, involves you being creative. It involves you being creative all the time, and you always have to. And I always have had this fear, like, what if I just wake up one day and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know what to make for dinner tonight. Yeah. Like there's this fear of like all of that inspiration, because I wake up with the hope and that I wake up inspired, that I can like infuse my day with that, because I am responsible for infusing other people and running a business, and it involves being creative and
But you're
being
so
inspired all the
human,
time.
so you must have those days, even when you're in full service, where you're just like, oh, I'm exhausted, or I
think we have a thirst to invent something experiential for ourselves every day.
Yeah.
There is part of us, and I think I speak for both of us, whether we like it or admit to it or not, problem solving for something experiential is really kind of the mission, whether it be for ourselves as a couple or individual or people that come here.
That's right.
And you know, our partnership is when I wake up sometimes and I have those moments like, oh, you know, where is the end of the tunnel? Like there are moments where
there isn't though. There's no way to do it.
No, and there's never nothing to do, right? There's never nothing to do.
There's never nothing to do.
Yeah.
But the question of like, what if it all goes away, or should we blow a hole in the side of the tunnel and climb out through the side of the mountain?
That's what I do a lot.
yeah.
I wake up, I would say once a month and say to Steve,
Yeah.
it's all too much. Let's just give it all away.
But I do think
But then you realize you love it too much and you're not ready to.
there's
So
that,
that's
right?
what you do all the
right.
time because
Yeah.
it takes that amount of energy. out of
right.
you.
I think, I feel lucky. I mean, there's part of me that there's a juggernaut aspect to this that's kind of consumed both of us. Like we've actually lost like true agency to say, okay, this is how we move away from this thing that's just, we're doing a lot, whether it's the restaurant or the COVID pivoted us into cabins and shops and online and, all sorts of other things,
And now you have
all
all
the
of it.
media thing. But we're still, bootstrapping our way through the day and the month and the year.
And we won't stop because I think neither of us will ever stop craving. And I feel like you're the same as we won't stop craving, wanting to create feelings for people, whether it's a film or it's dinners or it's meals.
to
Like
create
that's what I
something
crave.
from
I
nothing,
crave giving people a feeling,
Same.
like
Yeah.
giving them an experience and a feeling.
Thank
and
God.
Like
I mean, so I could talk to you all day and forever, and we will, and we're in fact going to make a major motion picture about it, so it's all good. But I always close asking people 2 questions. So the first question is, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? 18 for me is like pivotal thing. It's like when we're expected to know what we want.
I think I would tell her that it's okay to hurt. It's okay to go through those painful moments. Like, it's normal, it's natural, and to not feel like you've done something wrong because you're in that place of feeling discomfort.
Yeah, I love that.
Part of the path.
I would tell my 18-year-old self to take a chance sooner.
Be brave.
I tried at times. I'd call my parents and say, I think I should do X. And somehow I'd get talked, and I slunk back because I was afraid to take a chance sooner. That's what I would tell.
Listen to those, listen to that
inner-
voice, And then the next question is there for me it was a couple of people, but is there a person or certainly a moment in time that you feel like changed your path or made you who you are today?
I mean, it's definitely my son. That changed my path completely. I would not be sitting here right now if I didn't say, okay, we're doing this together. It's my change.
My change, there was one person I met that precipitated my move from Philadelphia to New York, and his name was Danny Amory. And he had somehow, he and his partners had sold their little TV network to Lorne Michaels. And I was coming out of a pretty horrific time, trying to put my guitar down and figure out what I was going to do. I'd burned up all of most of my 20s at that point, and he hired me off the street to run the music programming for this little ragtag college cable TV network. It set me on the course that I'm on today, and I still pull a lot of that forward into our world. Danny Amory changed.
By the way, I love the way I asked you all these questions about your past, and you know you're now telling this story. Thank God I asked you that question.
Well, he gets the credit. He gets the credit.
Yeah.
He changed.
But not. My point wasn't just that Danny, but like it's interesting that you're like not kind of telling those stories about like your own path, because I think you are in some ways, kind of, you're very modest. I think, in terms of like the how you talk about your path and where you ended up. But I'm glad I asked you that question. Yeah, and it can be more than one person, by the way. I think you probably. Meeting each other has probably had a very big impact on.
I would not have been. I wouldn't. So it's an important question. I don't think I would have met Erin if that hadn't. If my life hadn't gone there.
That's right.
I wouldn't have moved to New York. He set me on a path that has enriched my experience and my own personal skill set that we both take and use today.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of people that obviously ding you back and forth, but I didn't have, Erin becoming a young mother. I mean, that's kind of even more powerful in many ways. So, it's amazing though the way different people come in and out of your life.
No, that's
and
right.
tip
I
you in
mean,
different
for me,
directions. Yeah.
I became an old mother, but it did change my life as well at that time. And in fact, I think I've had more success since I had children because I just make better decisions because I really value the choices I make, directly impact the time I spend with them. And so I think that changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Michael, Erin, thank you. This was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.